Thank you, Torin. Mr. Prime Minister, Speaker of the Parliament, Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Jensen, the Chairman of the Board of the Employers Organization, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be here. And I have proved myself a good visitor. I've been out buying things all morning so that I would not just be a taker here. I'm honored to be here, and I have loved my brief experience. I'm also honored to be here with Hans Blix, who achieved international fame as the chief weapons inspector in Iraq. Unfortunately, he was not allowed to finish his job. If he had, we never would have had the current war in Iraq. But I am profoundly grateful to him for his world citizenship, and I thank you, sir, for being here. When I give these speeches around the world, and often on university campuses in the United States, I try to give a brief outline of where I think we are in the 21st century world. What are the major trends, the major challenges, and briefly speak about what I believe we should be doing. Then we go to questions and answers. So when I was driving in from the airport today, I was looking at these beautiful islands. I studied the sheep in the field very closely because when I was a little boy living on the farm, we had sheep, but we had no two-colored sheep. I was very impressed by that. I studied the cattle. We had cattle, but we had no cattle that could stand on the side of a mountain without falling into the water. I looked at the old-fashioned roofs with the grass on it, and I was thinking how far ahead of us you are now. All over America, we're in a mad rush to green all of our roofs, to put vegetation on our roofs, to cut down on the electric costs and the CO2 emissions that come from having inefficient buildings. And then I walked down the street and everybody I saw seemed happy. And I thought the best thing I could do is say nothing today. These people are doing just fine. But the truth is that the fate of the world is bound up with all of us, including yours. And the fact that you might become a major petroleum producer in a world where oil is just at $80 a barrel and probably will be $100 before long, will only bring you further in contact with the rest of the world, as is your outreach for tourism. And I now will become an informal ambassador for the Faroe Islands. I will tell everybody who hasn't been there how foolish they are not to have come. And I bought as many things as I could in my limited time here today because I realized when I went home to America, no one else would give a Christmas present from the Faroe Islands but me. And maybe I will correct that. And I say that because I was told when I got here that I might have to exercise some forgiveness because the first people to these islands were Irish monks. And my people all come from Ireland, and then the Nordics threw them out. But I forgive you for that. I know the Irish culture. This is very interesting and a different culture for me. I thank you. So let me begin, if I might, the way I would do this if I were in Beijing, China, or Tokyo, or London, or Rio de Janeiro, on the assumption that even though in some ways you are only now reaching beyond Northern Europe, there is no way for you to avoid being a part of the interdependent world. I was just talking to someone in one of the stores I visited about the fishing here and about how the fish were holding up because 90% of the world's fishing centers now have too few fish. They're not replacing rapidly enough. Part of this is because of overpopulation and overfishing these areas. Part of it is because the oceans are changing under us. The chemistry of the oceans is changing because of climate change. With more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and fewer trees on the land, the water is trying to make up the difference, sucking in more, trying to keep our planet healthy. But as it changes the way the ocean works, some of the plankton, some of the elements in the food chain of fish are not able to survive in the new water. So we're all bound up in this. So I think every citizen of the world, in order to form his or her own opinions about where you and your family and your society are, should be able to ask and answer 5 questions, simple questions. First, what is the fundamental nature of the 21st century world? I prefer the term interdependence to globalization. There is certainly globalization in an economic sense. You now have about $3 trillion crossing national borders every day in some form of currency or financial transaction. We have more trade flows than ever before. We have more investment flows than ever before. But our interdependence goes far beyond that. We are more diverse than ever before. I saw on the streets in the Faroe Islands today 4 people of Asian heritage and 1 person of African heritage all living here. In our country now, in the United States, we have many, many American urban areas with people from 100 to 150 different national and ethnic groups living together, working together, obviously representing all kinds of religious groups. We are bound together by technology and information technology, especially. When I got to my hotel room today, they had CNN. And then I turned on Sky News because I always like to see how the British view the news as opposed to the Americans. And if I could have spoken Danish, I could have read the subtitles on a French movie about a Vietnamese man and a French orphan girl. It shows you how we are all coming together. This is the first age of true global interdependence. Second question. So is this age of interdependence a good or a bad thing? I believe the answer is both. It is obviously good. If you get a lot of oil here, it will be really good for you, that people other places need it. If you have more tourists coming here, it's good for you. Besides, life is simply more interesting. So it's obviously, this has a lot of good to it. But the problem with our interdependence is we cannot escape other people's problems, and our problems soon become theirs. If you look at the problems of terror, weapons of mass destruction, if some terrorist should blow up a small dirty bomb in Canada, for example, there's a chance that the nuclear fallout would reach all the way here and at least change some of your ecostructure, which is so important for the future. If we're bound together in the good, it means we can't put up a wall against the bad. So we are vulnerable to both the positive and negative forces. That's one of the problems with the modern world. We share insecurity. Second problem is one I already alluded to that I have found a lot of sensitivity to just in the few hours I've been here. And that is we share a current challenge of unsustainability, which no nation owns because of climate change, the depletion of resources, and the coming explosion of the world population. If the world warms at the next 50 years at the rate of the last 10, tens of millions of people who live in coastal cities and populous countries will be displaced. Many areas now growing food will not be able to grow food. It is not yet clear whether the Gulf Stream, which keeps the North Atlantic, including the Faroe Islands, habitable in the winter, will be interrupted or not, but it could be. In any case, we cannot continue to play Russian roulette with our children and our grandchildren's future by putting so many greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, principally carbon dioxide and methane, mostly from agricultural and other natural sources. and expect anything other than something bad to happen to the earth.